Okay, and we're back again, and in this video we're going to continue with the primitive objects and some settings, some basic stuff. I've got a model here that I've made, and what I want to do with this model is I want to get into some of the viewport settings so that we can see the model a little bit better and kind of add to those tools we covered in the last video. So first thing you can see is my tank really isn't in the scene here in every one of these viewports. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom right, and I'm going to hit this Zoom Extents All, which we didn't really cover much in the last video, and click him, and you'll see that now my tank zooms out to extend around the tank in every viewport. So that's pretty simple. I can also use this Zoom All, which did not get covered much in the last video, and that allows me to zoom in and out on all viewports. So that'll give us something to go on. All right. Next, just a reminder that the Alt and the mouse wheel clicking down allows you to orbit the object. So that is what we use that button right there for, but you'll see I'm doing it with the mouse this time. And what that allows us to do is kind of keep one button active while we orbit. And we do that a lot because we're always looking around the back side of objects and underneath them. So you'll see me hold down, or you won't see me, but you will see this button not active even though it looks like I'm orbiting, because I'm doing it with the left Alt and holding down my mouse wheel or the third mouse button. Another thing you might have noticed is there's this little cube right here. This little magic cube. And what this guy does is it allows me to reset my viewport by clicking on it. And it has a lot of little arrows and little orbits around it. So if I click on these arrows, you can see that I can rotate my tank around. I can go to the top view. I can also orbit the tank from here by clicking on the little ring. So we'll just kind of flip it around here a little bit. It also gives me these little kind of counterclockwise and clockwise rotating buttons. And I can grab anywhere on the little box and orbit my tank around that way too. So all I'm doing is left clicking, holding down the button, and just orbiting around. So this little box, you won't see me use it much, but some students like to use it. I find that it's a little counterintuitive to go up here to the right, top right window just to orbit an object that I can orbit by holding down Alt and the mouse button. But you can see that little cube goes with my tank. So also, we want to be able to see this tank in different forms. So I'm going to do a maximize viewport toggle. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Remember, your mouse wheel will zoom in increments. This one will zoom a little bit freer. And I'm going to go up here to my viewports. I'm going to right click where it says perspective and just examine the different settings that I've got here. You get some extended viewports. We're going to come back to these guys in a second. There's also the settings here for your different viewports that we've covered before. I'm going to right click here where it says realistic, right there, and let's look at these guys. So right now it's on realistic, which is Shift F3. I can also go to shaded, which if I orbit this guy around, you'll see kind of makes him look a little bit better. I don't use shaded too much. I usually use realistic. Realistic uses a default scene lighting to light the scene. It also gives us some very kind of simple shadows, so it lets us see the form a little bit better. Consistent colors isn't going to change much right now. Edged faces is what we care about. So I'm going to put this on realistic and edged faces. And what you'll see are some lines running through here. Well, those lines we care about because now we can see what we're doing on the objects that we make. I can also go to facets, which our tank is pretty faceted right now anyways. There's wireframe, which you can see wireframe, whoops, makes it so it's kind of hard to see it, but we can select wireframe. I'm going to go back to realistic edged faces. And you can play around with some of these other settings. There's even stylized settings like graphite, so we can make a drawing of it. These will not export out to a video game, by the way. I can do a colored, a colored view. By the way, this is all 3D. You can see I can move those parts around in 3D. Kind of strange looking, but you can. And I'm going to go over here. Let's try one more. Let's do acrylic. And you can see now I have a painting of my tank, but it's all 3D. See? Pretty neat. Okay. I am going to undo those, so we're just going to undo that guy. We're going to go up here to realistic. Okay. Now, with realistic edge faces on, which you need to set that almost every time we fire up Max. And you'll usually see me set it up, but from now on, we got to be able to see those edge lines. I'm going to take this tank. I can hit delete to delete it, or I just undid that. I can go up here and hit reset, which is what I'm going to do. Every time you reset, you get a chance to save. I'm not going to save this, but if you would like to save your scene, you could do so right there. Max will then ask you, do you really want to reset? Which we really do, and we're back at a new scene. All right, let's make some primitive objects now. I'm going to go to the Create button over here in the Command panel, and under Standard Primitives, which should be the default, I'm going to make a box. And all I'm going to do is go to my Perspective Viewport. I'm going to left-click and drag. That makes the footprint. Let go of the left mouse button and push the mouse up on the mouse pad, and then click again to make it stop. And that's how we're going to make objects. So practice that a little bit. Also practice with some other objects. You can see I can make some spheres. Now these objects are going to clip into each other like that sphere just did. You can see these objects are overlapping each other or clipping each other. That's fine. I'm going to go to maximize my viewport. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to practice selecting these objects a little bit by left clicking on each one. Try to left click and hold down Control to select numerous objects. Hit delete on your keyboard. If you want to deselect, it's Alt, delete, and delete. And we're just left with this box. Try different objects. You do get things like a teapot, which is kind of fun. You get pyramids. Every one of them, you drag out the footprint, let go of the mouse button, push up, and just keep clicking that left mouse button to see what you get. You can see we get tubes. There you go. So I also have an auto grid button here that I'm going to play with. And by clicking the auto grid, I'm going to click on box and see my gizmos jumping around, see the colors scooting around. What it's doing is it's going to make a little grid on the object so that as I drag these out, they're stuck on the object, which is pretty neat for building things that we want stuck right on something. So with all those tools in mind, I'm going to go to reset. I'm not going to save this. I'm going to make a little table. And why don't you give this a try? You're not going to be turning this in, but it'll let us know if you know the viewport well enough. I'm going to drag out a box here. You can see I can change the width, length, height down here in the parameters, which we will be using quite a bit. I can also change those segments, which I don't need to do right now, but keep that in mind for a future video. I'm going to rotate this table around. I'm going to hop over here to my perspective viewport by maximizing it. So that grid right there, I can hit G to turn that grid on and off. And I'm going to turn it off. You'll see me turn it off most of the time just because I think it gets in the way. I'm going to hit box and auto grid this time, and I'm going to drag out one table leg. All right, so now we've got this table, but our table is going to fall over. And instead of trying to drag out the same box and type in these kind of abstract settings over here, what I'm going to do is go up to Move or W on your keyboard, and I'm going to get a better angle here so you can see what we're doing. There we go. And I'm going to hold down Shift and left click drag. So I'm holding down the left mouse button, and that's going to make a clone of that object. You can see clone options will pop up once I let go of the mouse button. I want to copy right now. I'm not going to rename it, but I could. And I'm just going to hit OK. I'm going to hold down Control to select the other leg, or just drag through both of those legs. So I could just select right across them, and it's going to select those legs. Or I can click on one, left click, hold down Control, and click the other one. And now I'm going to hold down Shift and make another clone. We're going to be making a lot of clones in this class because our objects that we're making are going to have a lot of complicated objects, and clones are going to be helpful. Just hit OK here to the default settings, and now we got ourselves a table. It's not a very fancy table, but it's a table. I'm going to go to pick 3 or 4 other objects here, and with auto grid on, and I want auto grid because see that grid that pops up right on the table? I want my objects to be right on the table. Let's take a look at some of these other objects. This is a torus or a ring. I'm going to make the radius on this a little bit smaller. Here's our teapot. That's a favorite all the time. Let's do a pyramid. There we go. And I'll do a, how about a tube? There we go. We'll just bump that up. Move the objects around on your table using the Move key. Some of them will be embedded in the table. So something like a sphere, when I drag it out, you'll see it's embedded in the table. I can just hit the base to pivot button here, and that's going to pop it right back up on the table. Not all objects have that, but anything that's got curved surfaces like toruses and spheres usually do. So, or you could just move it. They don't have to be exact. Okay, to wrap this up, what we're going to do is grab one object like a cylinder or a long box, something that could tip over, and just rotate it so that it looks like it's tipped over on your table, and kind of maneuver it around so the base and the object don't clip into each other. So if I rotate this, you'll see that that's kind of leaning there. See, it's kind of hovering above the table a little bit. There we go. And if you could do that so that the objects don't clip into each other, then you've really learned how to move things around in the viewport at this point. So I'm using the Orbit tool here, or Alt and center mouse button, third mouse button, or wheel. Just click that down. So, all right. So this does not need to be submitted in any way. It's just an exercise, but I will see you in the next video.